There's three things the grandparents don't need to be sharing with their adult children or their grandchildren. As grandparents, we come to the role with a lot of experience. We've been there, we've done that. And we think that we've learned a lot through our lives, and we think, well, we should be able to share that, or maybe we should be sharing some of this information. Well, when I talk to grandparents about sharing with their families, it always comes up. There are times when I just wish I hadn't said anything, or maybe I just shared a little too much, or all I said was. So when I look at all of those situations, it really comes down to three areas that we should probably not be talking so much about. Number one, parental advice. Now, we come with lots of experience. We've been parents. We know the mistakes we made. We know where we would improve things. So when our children, who we have always been giving advice to, become parents, it's natural for us to want to help out. Well, that's one of the situations where we don't need to talk. Our adult children, and I emphasize adult, are on their own. They have chosen to have children. They're making a go of it. But we have to remember that the circumstances in which they are bringing up children is way, way different than we did. Technology is a huge thing. Social media, their access to information is far, far beyond anything we could ever have imagined. You just Google parenting alone on Google, and there's thousands of resources available to them. And that's not including things on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, wherever they go for information. It's endless what they can find out. And they filter all of that information through and figure out what they want to be as a parent. As grandparents, we have to let them do that and not comment on what they do. We think we're going to be helping, but very often we think we're supporting, but it's taken as criticism. We have to remember that the children that we brought up have their own emotions, have their own memories. They will look back on their how they were brought up as a resource. They will look at that and go, I didn't like it when that happened. I didn't like it when my parents did this. I didn't like how I felt when that happened. That's all part of their filtering. So when they make decisions, we have to honor that they know what's best for them as a parent. A good example is a grandmother who I read about. Her daughter had given birth to a little baby girl. As a grandmother, she was there right the day when she came home from the hospital, and her daughter put the baby in one of those baby sacks and carried her around all day. The only time she took the baby out of that sack and put her in the crib was when she herself was going to bed. Now, the grandmother looked at that and went, put the baby in the crib. You don't need to be carrying it around all the time. Now, instead of saying that and offer the advice, like, I didn't do that with you, she stepped back and asked her daughter what her thinking was, why she was doing that. It turns out that the daughter really thought, from her perspective, her little baby girl had been in the comfort of the womb, hearing her mother's heartbeat, hearing her mother's voice, and was comfortable with that. And now is in this stark world, and this abruptly ends up without the comfort of the womb anymore. So she thought, well, why not have a transition when the baby is just a few days old, where the baby can hear her heartbeat, where her daughter can hear her voice. And she thought it was a kind and caring transfer from the room to the real world. Well, when the grandmother heard that, she thought, you know what, it kind of makes sense. She didn't say anything. She honored what her daughter was doing, But much to her surprise, it strengthened their relationship simply because she listened and she wanted to learn. We may think that we have a lot to offer, and we do. But sometimes the smartest way to show support is not to say anything. If they need help, they'll ask. But in the meantime, let's just be supportive and keep our opinions to ourselves. Number 2, financial situations. Now, as grandparents or as individuals, older adults, we understand our financial situation. And we think that because we are grandparents or older adults, maybe we should be sharing that with our family. Maybe they should know how we sit financially. And it's not a good idea to share absolutely everything for a couple of reasons. It depends how it's taken by the family. On one hand, they may look at it and go, oh my God, I'm so worried about my parents now. I'm so worried about Grandma and Grandpa. I'm worried that they can't make ends meet. And you're putting them in a position, particularly the parents, that they're trying to make their own way financially. And then in the back of their mind, oh my God, I've got to pay for soccer. I've got to save for their university. But what about mom and dad? And we're putting them in a position of anxiety. And why do that? It can also work the other way, where they look at things like, you know what, mom and dad, they're doing great. I'm their child. I'm entitled. They should be sharing that with me. A good example is a grandparents who thought that they would share their financial information with their daughter-in-law and their son, being open, transparent. So they sat down with them and explained everything, and that was fine. They didn't think anything more about it. Well, their granddaughter went to their father and said, I want to buy a car. Can you co-sign? And the son said, you know what? Go talk to Grandma and Grandpa. They got that stash of money. They'll be more than happy to do that. So the granddaughter went to the grandparents and said, I hear you can help me. They went, no, we're not in a position to help you. So it created a bit of a tension that didn't need to be there. And at the end of the day, they didn't need to share that information. We don't need to lay out to our children or our grandchildren what our financial situation is. Now, they do need to know that we are financially okay. We don't want them to worry. So we can tell them that or demonstrate it simply by living a healthy life and not talking about finances. Number 3, health concerns or healthier situations. Let's just leave that conversation aside. We need to, our grandchildren, possibly our grandchildren, but our adult children do need to know that our health is fine. If something goes wrong in our health, sometimes it's just visible. For example, I have arthritis. Okay, I can't get around the way that I used to. They see that, they get that. Do they need to know absolutely everything that I go through on a daily basis? No. They have their own lives. I would rather them concentrate on how to make their family the best that they can instead of worrying about whether I can get up and down the stairs or not. One funny story I heard from a grandmother. She had 2 things in her life that she loves: golf and gardening. So she had been out gardening all day, all morning, and she finished up and thought, well, I'll go in and have a cup of tea. Well, she went to turn and she twisted her knee. It was a minor twist. She went in, made the cup of tea, put a heating pad on her knee, and she was fine. Nothing more to be done. She felt perfectly good. So the next day, she feels fine. She goes golfing. Well, later on, she's talking to her son and said to her son, oh yeah, I twisted my knee the other day, but I'm fine. That's all she said. Well, her son, bless his heart, was so concerned concerned. And she said by the time they ended the conversation, he had her having a knee replacement. You gotta love the concern. But she said, I wish I hadn't said anything. And she knows in the future, she jokes about it and says in the future, I'm just going to talk about how great my roses are growing. I'm not talking about how I'm feeling. And it's to the point, I talked to a celebrity grandmother one time, and she said, I asked her about how much she shares with her family about her health, and she said nothing. She said, first of all, they have their own lives. They don't care, how she's feeling, but they do want to be with her. And she loves that. And she said, but when she's with them, she would be far happier talking to them about what they're up to, what's in their lives, what's going on. She wants to know about them. She doesn't want to talk to them about the aches and pains of her daily life. So we don't need to. We need to know what we need to share for our long-term health, so they know what to expect, but they don't need to know how we're doing on a daily basis. Leave that out of the conversation and show support to them. Find out what's going on in their lives and how you can make their lives easier. It's all about support. So what it comes down to is let's be discreet on what we want to share. Let's think it through. Do they absolutely need to know about what's going on in our daily lives? Sure, it's fun to share, but not our daily health, certainly not about our finances, and they don't want to hear our parent advice unless they ask. So let's be supportive and let's be discreet on what we share with our family.